The Equal Justice Initiative is an exhaustive study on lynchings in the South, and they found that about 4,000 people are known to have been lynched in 12 southern states from 1877 to 1950. Well, to commemorate this history and remember the terrorism that swept the South, their new idea is to mark and preserve the sites of where the known lynchings happened. And the project would help shed light on just how widespread terrorism was in the South. So let me go ahead and give you an example of that here. Quote, "A crowd of nearly 2,000 people gathered in Georgia in 1899 to witness the lynching of Sam Holt, an African-American farm laborer charged with killing his white employer. A newspaper described the scene. Sam Holt was burned at the stake in a public road. Before the torch was applied to the pyre, the Negro was deprived of his ears, fingers, and other portions of his body." They continue, "Before the body was cool, it was cut to pieces. The bones were crushed into small bits, and even the tree upon which the wretch met his fate were torn up and disposed of as souvenirs. The Negro's heart was cut in small pieces, as was also his liver. Those unable to obtain the ghastly relics directly paid more fortunate possessors extravagant sums for them. Small pieces of bone went for 25 cents, and a bit of liver, crisply cooked, for 10 cents. Many lynching victims were accused of little more than making, quote, boastful remarks, insulting a white man, or seeking employment out of place. Lynching was community sanctioned. Lynchings were frequently publicized well in advance, and people dressed up and traveled long distances for the occasion. The January 26, 1921 issue of the Memphis Press contained the headline, quote, "May lynch 3 to 6 Negroes this evening. Clergymen and business leaders often participated in the lynchings. Few of the people who committed lynchings were ever punished. What makes the lynchings all the more chilling is the carnival atmosphere and aura of self-righteousness that surrounded the grisly events. They say railroads sometimes ran specific excursion trains to allow spectators to watch lynchings. Lynch mobs could swell to 15,000 people. Tickets were sold to lynchings. The mood of the white mobs was exuberant, men cheering, women preening, and children frolicking around the corpses." That's some heavy stuff, man. I don't know how anybody can say they're not in favor of what the Equal Justice Initiative is trying to do now. They're trying to make it so that we remember the disastrous, brutal, savage, barbaric history of white Christian terrorism in the South. They're trying to let us know, look, man, we always get so cocky, it's so gross. People in general, but definitely a lot of Americans, definitely a lot of Southerners, where it's like, they celebrate the Confederacy, and they still fly the flags, and they still do Civil War reenactments, and sometimes they pretend that their side wins, and they have Robert E. Lee Day is on the same day as Martin Luther King Day in some states. I mean, what this is, you're embracing the terrorist mindset of the past. These aren't just matters of opinion where, no, man, the Confederate flag means what we want it to mean. It represents states' rights. No, that was the cover story to try to put a veil of respectability over white Christian terrorism. If you want to fly that flag and you want to talk about the Confederacy and about how Robert E. Lee was great and about how if the Civil War were today, I'd fight on the side of the South. If you want to talk about that stuff, you can also say you're in favor of freedom and you're in favor of democracy and you're in favor of equal rights under the law. You just can't do it because those things do not mesh together. They are contradictory. They're mutually exclusive. You pick one or you pick the other. Stop celebrating a history and a past that was built on a mistake. You cannot support these things without a wink and a nod to deep racism and systemic racism and slavery and Jim Crow and segregation and all of these horrific things. I mean, when you look at what happened here, it really puts in perspective what human beings are capable of. And we have this amazing tendency to not be able to realize how the future will judge you at a given time. Like these guys, they didn't realize these white terrorists, KKK terrorists, did not realize when they were lynching people and having a jolly old time burning black people alive for speaking out of line to a white person. They didn't realize that 50 years down the road, 100 years down the road, we look back at you and we say, you were the problem. You're the bad people. In this story, you are the Al-Qaeda. Do you not understand that? They didn't understand that, and they don't understand that. To this day, they sweep it under the rug. No, don't look at that. Okay, that's one part. Just not talk about that part of it. Let's only talk about the good part and the happiness, and forget that part. Forget the fact that we built a nation on keeping black people as slaves and then literal second-class citizens, and now today people try to pretend like, no, it's cool. Now everything's totally even Stevens and equal in every way, shape, and form. Really? Really? You believe that? Do you not understand that the second they signed the Civil Rights Bill and the second they signed the Voting Rights Act, it's not like overnight the same people whose grandfathers were lynching people and they were little kids at the event, they said, okay, now I love black people. What are you talking about? Now I want to go to a Master P concert. No, it has to do with hearts and minds as well. You need to change hearts and minds. A piece of legislation is absolutely important and it's vital. But you also need to get at the culture and get at the root and get at the hearts and the minds of the people who were raised in a culture that did not value black lives at all. To the point where they lynch them and they celebrate lynching them. To them, black people were less than human, less than a dog. They treated their dogs and their pets with more respect than they treated men and women. They absolutely should commemorate and put statues all over the place where we knew there were lynchings. All 4,000 known cases, put a statue up in every area, every single one. This way, maybe people will be humbled